Good morning and welcome back. This is the next installment in the Soldier series, the Sacred Rage series. And I'm hoping that you'll stick with me for the next 10 minutes. I know a lot of people like to thank soldiers for their service, and this is my ask. If you want to thank me for my service, is to listen to what you're thanking me for. Um, and each week, we'll dive into different topics. And this week's topic is about the nervous system and about fight, flight, or freeze, and what causes it. And then we'll talk about some ways that you can move yourself out of that. Um, so to kind of talk about some of the things that cause this fight, flight, or freeze, your nervous system is designed to protect you. And your brain is constantly scanning for threats, and then your body responds in a way to protect you from the threat. And it's kind of the interpretation of the threat that decides how your body thinks that it can proceed. So, one way is, okay, we're going to fight our way through this. Like we're going to, we have an adversary, we have someone we can fight, something that we can fight, and it prepares your body for the fight. Um, and this is um, a lot of times when you're trained and you're equipped to do what you're asked to do, this can be the system that kicks in. And sometimes when you feel more like, okay, like the odds are kind of stacked against me, like maybe we're outnumbered, maybe we don't see where the threat is coming from. Flight can kick in. It's like, okay, we need to run and hide and take cover. And freeze is more of a when we feel helpless, when we feel like we're unable to react. And there's nothing that, it's not courage that decides which system kicks in. It's kind of your mind stores, the things that you've faced before, and it's more of a primal reaction. But the thing is sometimes our body, especially where there's chronic stress or there's chronic threat, your body doesn't understand that the threat is over. And I remember my first trip to Iraq. I remember, being in my car, and there was a song that had come out called Arlington by Trace Atkins, and it's a beautiful song. But I remember um, every time I would hear it, I would cry. Um, and part of it was I didn't know what I was going to face. I didn't know if I was, going to see it coming. I didn't know if I was going to be prepared to respond to it. I didn't know how we as a unit would be able to respond to it. But I knew that there was a possibility that I wouldn't come home. Sorry. And so, like, every time the song would come on, I would cry, which, didn't feel very soldierly because I was told I wasn't supposed to cry. I was supposed to suck it up. I was supposed to be tough. Um, and I remember, on my way to Iraq, running into someone who was coming out of Iraq as we were coming in, and they had just had a mortar attack, where people, had been there for a year, and they were within a week of coming home. Um, and the BX, the base exchange, the place where we shop, had been hit by a mortar, and it had landed on these people, and they had died. Um, so this is what a lot of soldiers face when they go into these places, is this unseen, this unexpected threat, this adversary that you can't see. Um, and I remember sitting on a flight line. We were going to go fly to one of our forward operating bases to check on some of our soldiers to, and to, see how they were doing. And I was sitting on this little mini bus waiting to get on my plane. Um, and a mortar landed within 10 feet of our bus. And had it not been a dud, we'd have all been dead. And, this was a common occurrence. They called the base that I was stationed at primarily Mortaritaville because, all the time, especially when we slept, we were getting mortars and rockets. And I remember telling my dad, because, you never want to worry your parents, sometimes the less they know, the better. And I remember telling my dad, "Oh no, don't worry. We're going to the safe part of Iraq." Um, and I remember him telling me, like you can tell your mom that, but I've read about where you're going, and they do call it Mortaritaville. And he was like, "So just stay safe," um, which is not something you necessarily have control over. But I remember lying in bed at night, and I was afraid to sleep. Because I was afraid that something would happen while I slept. And of course, there's nothing you can do about it. When it's your time, it's your time, and me worrying about it wasn't gonna do anything. But it's this constant threat of death that set my nervous system into this. And I would oscillate. Sometimes it would be fight, flight, freeze. Sometimes all at the same time. Uh, Convoys were hard because everything could be an improvised explosive device. Um, they were burying explosives and dead donkeys along the side of the road, piles of trash. Sometimes you wouldn't even see it. It was just a pressure plate that had been buried in the dirt. Um, and so even short convoys, you would be exhausted when you would get to the other side because you're constantly scanning. Is that a bomb? Is that a bomb? Is this the thing that's gonna kill me? Um, and part of what I want to talk about today is, um, when your body doesn't realize that the threat is over, a lot of times we don't understand why soldiers act the way they do. Because when your body is stuck in fight, um, it's like this constant tension that your body is in. And I remember coming home and, my boss would ask me something ridiculous like, "Oh, we painted the rocks, like there's a stray cone, traffic cone here," the things that in my mind didn't matter. When you see your buddies getting loaded onto a plane with a flag draped over a coffin, things like traffic cones don't matter. And it's hard because we ask our soldiers to come back and to be normal, and it's hard, to be normal when you see the things that you've seen, and you've seen how ridiculous what your leaders are asking you to do is. I mean, if you think about it, like, why were we in Iraq? Why were we in Vietnam? Why were we in Korea? Why were we in all of these places? And for me, that contributes a lot to the anger. Is watching people die on both sides, and for what? Um, but a lot of times, this anger, it's confusing. You don't know what's causing it. You just know that you're angry. Um, and unfortunately, a lot of times, the people that you love, it gets kind of, they're like a target of opportunity, and that doesn't make it right. Um, but I remember when I was the police commander in Colorado, there was an infantry battalion that was nearby, and I remember when we would have our joint policing um, uh, meetings, they would say, "Okay, our soldiers are coming home. This has been a particularly hard deployment. So just be prepared, because there are spikes in domestic violence. There are spikes in, just fights downtown, because there's this anger, that you don't know what to do with. And a lot of times, your fellow soldiers would be like, oh, you're having a hard time. Let's take you out and get you drunk, because that they don't know what to do. They don't know what to do with their own anger. Um, and and so a lot of times, the people around us suffer, because we don't know what to do with it. This fight can become anger and irritability. This flight can become avoidance or withdrawal, because you can feel it and you don't want to put it on other people, but you don't know what to do with it. And again, freeze is this like dissociation, this numbness. Um, and I remember that was me. I was a combination of, I just kept thinking, if I just keep myself busy enough, you know, um, then I won't have to feel it. And there is something to that, because there's another video that I talk about where I talk about titration, and it's processing it just as much as your system can handle. And what I would do is I would stop for a little bit. I would process a little bit. I'd go on a retreat, or I would do an intensive with a therapist. Um, and then I would process that piece, and then I would keep moving, because I couldn't stay in it. And the problem is, the VA has recognized that somatic processing is necessary, because you have to teach your system that it's safe again. But the problem is that most VA therapists aren't trained in somatic therapies. So what you get stuck with is mostly talk therapy, which can only get you so far. Um, and so, yeah, and today's video, I would urge you to go and look at some of the videos on healing trauma through the body. We talk about titration, we talk about pendulation, and it kind of talks about some of these ways where you can kind of help yourself through these. And sometimes you can't help yourself through. Sometimes you don't have the tools. Sometimes you can't see your blind spots. Sometimes it really helps to work with another person, who knows what you're going through, who knows how to help you through it. Thankfully, um, even though I wasn't a psychologist in the military, I finished that up after I retired, and thankfully, like I knew enough to go, okay, this is what my system needs. This is how I heal. Um, and like I said, today's video isn't necessarily how to heal. It's more like to help the people around you to understand what it is that you're going through, to maybe offer a little bit of grace. And if you didn't check out last week's video, it's kind of a, how can we hold space for the people that we love, the people that have been through things. And sometimes it's more than we can hold, and sometimes it's helping to get them to someone that can help them, that can hold more than what we can. And so I'm going to continue this series. I'm going to continue to talk about, some of the issues that face soldiers. But really, these issues are things that a lot of people face. A lot of people who have trauma face these same things. Threats are all relative. It can be, if you're being abused, that is a trauma. It's going to trigger the same fight, flight, or freeze in your body. And so I'm hoping that you'll continue to check in, and that we can continue to have this conversation, because my goal is to change the face of healthcare, the way that we help people, the ways that we look at people that are struggling through a period. And so I hope that you'll tune in next week, and that we can talk more about this fight, flight, or freeze. We can talk more about what it is that our soldiers are being asked to do. And until then, thank you for tuning in.